Hi, I'm Chris Handler, Your Whole House Home Inspections. Today we're going to work on replacing a garage door. Very simple, straightforward process. This one is what was here when the builder built the house. Thing about garages is that there's supposed to be a fire rating between the garage and living areas of the house. For whatever reason, I don't believe the builder used this as a fire rated door, and you can typically tell if a door is fire rated or not by there's a label on the end of the door that'll tell you so. But then the other oddball about this door is that the rest of the house has 6-panel doors, and for whatever reason they put a smooth door on this. So what we're going to do is we have a new 6-panel fire rated door. It's a 20-minute fire rating. One of the quicker ways that you can tell if a door is fire rated or not too as well, not always guaranteed, but a good indicator is that the hinges will be spring loaded so it's self-closing, so the door always remains shut no matter what. Also, when you buy them, it'll say fire ratings. One of the other things about doors that you need to know about is how you determine the swing of a door. As a general, well, not a general rule, but as it is that when the door swings away from you, then you determine what side the hinges are on. Will tell you if it's a right-hand swing or a left-hand swing. So in this case, this is a right-hand swing door. Pretty straightforward installation. What we're going to do first is we're going to remove the trim work. And in the case of this one, what we want to do is we want to reuse the trim. So very cost-effective way of not having to go out and buy all the new trim and having to have the saws to cut it and everything else to save a little time saver. You have to put forth a little bit more effort on a couple things, but I will show you a quick, easy process as far as how to do that. One of the other things about the fire ratings in garages is the drywall is typically a thicker fire rated type drywall too as well, and for that reason the door frames are going to be quite a bit thicker than what you normally see. So in the case of this one, the builder actually installed a strip here, a filler strip, to make up the difference for the thickness of that wall. So first thing, easiest thing to do, get the door off and get it out of your way so you can go ahead and start working and make it easier to get the things into place. So that's what we're going to do first, is we're going to take the hinges off here and take the door off and put it somewhere out of the way. Okay, we got the door off now, so what we're going to do is work on taking this trim off. Now, as I said before, what we're going to do is we're going to preserve the trim that we have because we're going to reuse that. It will certainly save quite a few dollars in the material cost, as well as, again, the time of having it cut to the pieces that fit, and then the painting and everything else. We're still going to have to repaint the trim, but at least we can just go ahead and reuse what we have. And nobody really would never know the difference whether it's been replaced or not once we're done. So what I like to do with the trim, this is a wallpaper stripper. And it's a 4-inch razor blade. And the reason I like using this is because when these doors are put in and when you go to paint, you typically will caulk this edge along here and along where it meets the jamb of the door. The 4-inch scraper gives you the advantage because you can hold it flat and you're able to cut perfectly the right amount of that caulking out of there, so that when you put the frame back into place, all you do is put a bead of caulk down, painter's caulk down in there, you paint it, and nobody ever knows that you ever cut the door out and you put a new one in. So we're going to do that real quick and show you how that's done. Now, as you can see, what I'm trying to do is lay the blade down flat, so that way it gives me a good flat surface, and you just run it right along the wall and they'll cut the caulk just perfect. Then when you get down to the base trim, again, it gives you a nice straight edge, and you can cut that caulking at where the base trim meets the bottom of the wall there too as well. Okay, now that's cut, and we're going to make one more pass down it, just to make sure we're cut cleanly through on that. And then where it meets the jamb, again, you want to try to lay it in there flat and just follow the line. Okay, now that's that side. You kind of start pulling, you'll see it start coming loose. In this case, on this door, the door's been slammed a few times, so you already have some separation of trim, so it kind of makes it a lot easier when it's already separated there. You'll see get a lot of jagged edges there. Don't worry about that, because once the trim's off, before we're ready to put on, we'll do a cleanup on it. So now you have that cut, you can get your blade under there and give a little wiggle room, and the trim will start breaking away from the wall. So now that you have all that separated, just take your claw hammer and just gently work your way around. Now you don't want to pry too much on this because you don't want to poke into your drywall. It's real easy to dent that, so very easy to pry back on it. And there's that side, and we'll just set that off out of the way. And there's your top and your other side. Okay, and then of course the procedure is same, repeat on the other side to get the other trim off on the other side of the wall. Now what we're going to look at too is, now we've got access, we can see how they have assembled the jamb into what they call a rough opening. And as you can see, there isn't hardly any gap at all. So, and this is my preferred method, is that you want this side of the jamb, your hinge side, to be as tight to the frame as you can get it. So that way it's going to get, that's where all the forces are. It needs to be the strongest point. So having that directly attached is what you want. This is the way that they did it when they built the house, so it's great. I'm very happy to see. On the other side, you'll have a much larger gap, and that's what we'll use to shim the new door, and then we'll go over that when we get the new door in place. So at this point, I'm going to go to the other side and remove that trim there. Okay, I've got the other side of the trim taken off on the garage side. An interesting point on that, when the trim guys, when they did the trim on this, they actually used quarter round. I don't know if you can see the profile on that. They just trimmed it out with some quarter round, which is actually very inexpensive and very quick and easy to do that, to make that spacer for the additional wall thickness. So what I'm going to do now is time to take out the old door frame. These are made, the thresholds are screwed into the sides of the jamb, so it's actually a four-sided box, essentially. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put the hammer and I'm going to pry it back a little bit. Now you don't have to worry so much about your edge of the drywall, because again your trim's going to get right back here around that, so if you do a little damage around that area, no big deal. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a reciprocating saw. People call them Sawzalls too as well. That was actually a takeoff of the Milwaukee brand. This is the higher expensive ones. Certainly any of the cheap ones work great if you plan on just doing a handful of jobs. They'll certainly will do the job for you. You don't have to worry about going out and making a major purchase on one of these things. This is kind of one of those things you pass on down to generations. So. That's that side. Just need to gap it enough to get the blade in there. And just follow it down so you hit the nails and cut them off. That should and that's the old frame. So we'll just set that down here in the garage out of the way. So now we can see why you always want your hinge side to the frame of the house. You've got a rigid, solid 2x frame here, and you can see that they've done a whole lot of shimming on this side, so it's not very strong over there. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the builder's shims and stuff out of here, and I'm going to cut in solid board so we have a much better hold on this. And that was kind of the reason why the other door you saw was separated at the top, was the door being closed every year, so it's not being a very strong point. It was allowing itself to push itself out. So I'm going to spend a little extra more time with this side of the jamb here. Okay, back from the hardware store. Like any other job you expect, once you get into it, you may find a couple surprises. You'll have to run out and make a couple adjustments. And in the case of this one, as I said before, they kind of did a extra lot of shimming on this side of the rough opening to match the new jamb. It was a very weak setup, so we're going to improve on that. So what I did was measured from the rough opening to the outer edge of the drywall. Turned out to be 1.25 inches difference. So instead of going through the process of trimming a 2x4 down and trying to make it fit, what I'm going to use is a decking board. And what that is, and this is just your standard outdoor deck board. It's a 5/4, we call 5/4 board, meaning it's 1.25 inches thick and handy. That is exactly what we needed to get fit on that side. The thing you want to make sure about doing something like this is make sure you get the driest board you possibly can, because once you put it in the wall and it'll acclimate to the humidity temperature, it'll start shrinking and it can create some maybe unwanted movement that may show up later. So I bought an 8-footer. I cut it down myself already with the Sawzall, but you can certainly have them cut it to length that you need, so you don't need another tool to have to do this. Also, that being said, You don't really need to have a Sawzall for this job. When you're cutting the nails and screws for the jamb, you can just simply buy a hacksaw blade and wrap some duct tape around it and just use it as a handsaw, and that'll be just as effective. Just takes a little bit longer to have to do it. So the Sawzall definitely makes things a lot easier. So we'll set this up in place. Now, the one thing about this is with your finished walls around the outsides, you don't really want to beat around on this framework, because what can happen is you can cause a couple nail pops or some other damages on that. So what I'm going to do is I've just got some of these coated decking screws, and they're 2.5 inches long. We're just going to run a bunch of them into that, and that'll be more solid than it ever was originally designed. That would actually snap the head off. So, and if you notice, I did a zigzag pattern. One thing about decking boards is it likes to warp, so I like to make sure you kind of do a W pattern on down, so that way you're completely flush and it'll remain flush forever on that. So, very simple on that. Okay, so we've got our jamb set up. I've measured around the opening and checked the measurements with the door opening. It does look like it's going to be a lot tighter of a fit, especially at the bottom portion, so we may end up having to do a little trim in there. So what we're going to do next is what I've done is taking the packaging off of the new door. Also pulled the old trim, or the original trim that came with the door. This is a brick mold trim. It's an exterior trim. It's much thicker and larger. I'm not going to use that. What I'm going to do is reuse my trim that was on the garage side of the door, which again was the standard colonial style casement that we used on the inside. So we just pulled that off, set off the side, pulled off some of the nails that are sticking out there, and this is ready. We're going to set this in place, check our fitment around, and then want to see what kind of adjustments we'll have to make to our opening on that. Okay, so as I expected, we're going to have to remove some of that material on that board that we added at the bottom portion of the door. Looks like probably the lower 12, 16 inches on that. Then the other thing I see here is that the new door is a little bit taller than what the old one was, and that is just about 1.25 inches taller. There is a couple layers of flooring that's been done over the years. There's an original 1/4 inch Luan, and then there's a vinyl flooring. Of course, now there's a Pergo flooring on top of all of that. So I'll get to buy myself a little bit there on the step down when it gets into place. But we'll still have to remove some of the material up at the top here. Now the good thing is that when the builder built the place, and we have lots of insulation up here, is that we still have probably a 2-inch gap before we get to the actual header of the door opening, so no problem. But that does bring into a new issue now, is that The new trim, we're gonna have to buy new trim because this trim is going to be about an inch short at the bottom now when we put it into place. So unfortunately we don't get to reuse our old trim. It kind of happens like that. Always plan on for being the worst case scenario of having to buy all new trim pieces and everything else. Good news on that is, again, you don't have to have any saws to do that. They sell these trim packages with the miter cuts all ready to go. All you have to do is just open up the wrapper and nail the pieces in place and then finish up the nail holes and all that. So, so I'm going to go ahead and take the time to do that, and then we'll come back and try fitting our door again from there. Okay, took quite a few minutes, but in this case, you don't have any other choice but to either take that board, the filler board, back out and run it through a table saw if you have that available, or like what I did, left the board in place, and I just took the saws off and just shaved off the 1/4 inch, probably more than I needed to, but you want to have a filler space to put shims in, so no big deal if you take too much out, we'll just shim it out later. But that does give us a far superior hold there. Also, I'd set the door back in just to confirm that space is good. We are good. And while it's in place, what I did was took a marker and marked the top of our opening to determine how much of the drywall we need to remove up there. I'm not going to use the saws off for that because drywall is a lot of dust and there's no sense in having a power saw. So what I have is just your standard basic keyhole saw, and we'll just cut up to our lines. And then just drive through and follow our line. You know what? We've got enough material here. I'm actually going to do a different trick on that. We can just probably cut this with the razor knife. Just follow the line. And just snap it. Much easier, quicker, simpler, not as much dust. Okay, so that's gone. Now I have to repeat on the other side, take that piece out, and then we should be good to fit a door in. So we'll get done with that and then we'll try a door fit. Okay, got the other side cut out, and I'm not sure exactly. This house is only 28 years old, and so typically everything made today is not changed from when this house was built. But again, I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that other door, the rough opening. The rough opening is here is for a standard door today, and it was then, so I don't know where they got that door. It seemed to be a little bit shorter. Anyway, so you always have to plan for some adjustments as you go. So just take a broom here real quick and we'll kind of clean out our threshold area real good. You do see one little nail sticking up down below. We'll take a pair of pliers and pull that out. Now we know that for sure we have a good fit down at the bottom, so nothing's going to throw us out of level. And we'll see how our door fits. Well, I'm going to have to say, that fits like a glove. You can't beat that. That's perfect. Certainly the less shims you use, the much stronger the door is going to be. And that has definitely got us right where we want to be. Looks like we've got a pretty good gap here. So what we'll do is we'll push that in place, put some shims back behind it. Now, these are the standard shims that they sell at the hardware stores now. Just an extra needless little bit of information about these. They actually call them shingles. The old timers, if there's any out there, are still working. They call them shingles because if you look at the profile, they actually used to use the old wood shingles and they just split them down and use those for shims. So, anyway, give this information there for you. So this is all ready to go. So what we're going to do first is we're going to secure our hinge side first. So we'll have to move a couple things here. And what we're going to do, we know the assumption is that this side of the frame is plumb, square, ready to go. Since that's where the original door was. So I'm not going to mess as far as anything as that. We'll just stick with what they had already done there. So the main part of this now is that when you purchase these doors, they pretty much come with everything that you're going to need to get the door secured into place. And so you always want to make sure that they have this little plastic packet secured to the door when you get them from the hardware store. Sometimes people throw them out not realizing they need them, then they go back and just swipe the ones that are on the door from somebody else's product that they'll be buying. So what they do is they come with 2 long screws. When you look at the hinges, they have screws that they've left out. Now again, from what I can see, is that I got shorted on my 2 screws. So what they do is they leave extra screws out of the hinges because what they do is they give you these nice big long ones, and that will go back into the framing, and that makes this door rock solid on the hinge side. So what I did was when I took the old door off, I kept my old screws just in case. So I had the original screws that the other door came with, and actually they're a bit beefier and even better than the ones that they sent with this door. So, so we're just going to reuse these, and then that makes this side rock solid on that. But I am going to use these small ones to use as a pilot. So what you want to do, just make sure that your door is flush with your interior drywall, top and bottom. That way your trim will fit nice and flush. Center the screw up and run it in. Just make sure if they do the final screw, make sure it's lined up. Well, unfortunately, that one's going to strip out. We're not going to get to use it. and that one's stripped out too. Oh well, it was always worth a shot, so we'll just use the ones that came with it and finish that up. Okay, since that one's stripped out, we'll have to take a pair of pliers to it and just go with the hard way. Okay, now, in the factory, also, they use all the normal screws down at the bottom, so they didn't give you a place to put those long screws in the hinges. I don't agree with that. Again, you want a long screw in each one of those hinges. So what I'm going to do, because I'm going to take these out anyway to paint, is we're going to take the seals out, and these just tuck in. So they make the weather seals easy and pull those out, and then that way it's easier to paint. You don't have to worry about getting paint on them. But the other thing I like to do too is that's where I like to put my screws at, is underneath that trim, and it's one less screw hole or nail hole you have to fill in and all that, so you have to utilize the center of that jam to hold those in place, and hold the jam in place. So then I'm just going to use my coated multi-use screws, and we're going to put some down at the bottom there, which will be underneath where the seal goes. And that hides it up nicely, and nobody will ever know. That is one rock solid door frame. So we're going to do the same on the other side. What I'm going to do is, I know our door was kind of hanging up here in the middle on us a little bit. And it looks like the reason why is that they've got a metal plate secured to the back side there's a reinforcement for the door jamb. So that should pull itself into the wood once we put a screw in there. So we'll go ahead and do that on that side. And again, you just want to line up your jam. And I like to put one right in the middle of the lock sets, because again, that's going to be a point of weakness, and you want to be as strong as you can. And then we'll try our door swing. That is a really nice fit. I like it. I think that I did, because when I trimmed that bottom of the door up, I messed the drywall up, so I wasn't able to line that up. So I'm going to try to take that screw out and try to get this bottom to kick in just a little bit. Now the trick to the door fitment is that it's really just eyeballing. You just want a nice consistent gap all the way around on that, and that's what you're after there. So it looks like, to me, it's a pretty good fit all the way around. I may do a couple shims here at the bottom side just to kind of bring that in a little bit, and the rest of it looks pretty well consistent all the way down. Not hitting anywhere. Good solid seal. So that's where we'll go with that. Okay, so we've got our shingles in place. I love this. Only 2 shingles to shim a door out. When you get a door to fit this snug and you still have plenty of ample space between the jamb and your door, so that way it doesn't rub. You really have to watch seasonal fluctuations. This time of the year, we're in the winter month right now, December, getting ready to get into Christmas. Come spring, when the humidity starts cranking up, the garages see all the same temperatures and humidity increases as the exteriors do. So we do see a lot more swelling with woodwork involved in with the garage area. So make sure you have plenty of ample space around that. By design, when they build these, they already have that built into the space. So all you're really doing is just making sure your gap is consistent all the way down the opening on that. So, and like I said, what I did was applied the screws. And as you can see, there was one here, one here, one here, and one down there at the bottom shim. And as you can see, you don't see them because I put that weather seal back in, covers the screws up. One less thing you got to do when you're going back to do your painting and patching in holes in the soil. So next, so you got the extra little bit of wood shim that sticks out, and that's very simple. And we'll just take a razor knife where I set that down at. So just a standard basic utility knife, and just, it's very soft wood, so it's real easy to cut down. And just knock it off flush. Done. Shingles are gone, all ready for the interior trim. I said, unfortunately, the new door is a little bit larger than the last one, but that's fine. You can see my cut's not so great up at the top edge. Doesn't matter, we still have 1.25 inches of wood trim that's going to cover right over the opening. And actually having this gap's going to allow me to go ahead and tuck that insulation that was in there. We can get that tucked back into place too as well. So now the other thing, again, being a fire rated door, they're required to be self-closing. So, and these came with actually hinge springs. So there's a little pin, and the kit comes with an Allen wrench, and then there's a little pin that goes to that. Okay, back from my trip number 3 to the hardware store. So always expect, you never know what you're going to come across once you get into these projects, and always plan on and accept that you're going to have to make 1 or 2 trips or more to the hardware than you expected. Take that time to kind of reflect and go over everything that you've done, and you may even come across something you didn't think of or what have you. So one of my trips wasn't fully necessary. I knew that I needed to have a new deadbolt. My regular knob set was already new that I had replaced a while back. And then the deadbolt that was on the original door didn't have a key lock on the outside. So this new one will have a key lock on the outside, and I'll rekey those later to match so that one key fits all of my exterior doors in my house. And then we'll certainly do a video on that. So yeah, unfortunately, when I went through the new frame, I went back and measured the old frame to kind of see what was my differences and why this one was bigger. And so what I can tell so far is, one, is that the framework itself is a little bit thicker than what the original one was, and that may be the fact that this one was a fire rated door, the last one was not. The other aspect was that the threshold sticks up a little bit higher, is much thicker and beefier than the last one, and that's because it's an adjustable threshold and everything else. So that kind of what accommodated for extra space up top there. So I bought 4 pieces of casement trim that matches what was the original. I'm going to reuse some of the old pieces because, again, this door is a little bit wider than the last one, so I'm going to need a new top piece. So I'll use the original trim piece. I'll cut that to length and make our top piece first. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from essentially about 1/4 inch back from this edge on the side jamb on each side, and that's going to be my length for my top piece, and we're going to cut that from short to short. Now, as far as reusing the trim, the key to doing this is, the prep for it is you're going to have some nails sticking back through the back side. So You don't want to beat them back through because that'll splinter out the face of the wood, and that's just more patching you have to do. So the idea is take a pair of channel locks. These work really well because they're rounded over, and you just grab it, curl it down, and pull it out from the back side, and just knock your splinters off of there. So you just go down and do each one of those. Okay, now if that's done, you're going to have a lot of excess caulk kind of hanging off here and there and all that. So what you want to do is take yourself a good utility knife, good sharp edge. You want to do this slowly. Oops, I missed a nail. You want to do this slowly because it's real easy, especially on the thin edge of the trim. It's real easy to hack a piece of it out. So what you want to do is just kind of get started and just do a kind of close eyeball to it. You don't have to have all the caulk removed because you will be adding new caulk to the trim when you put it back up after all the trim is installed and prior to painting. And that goes to a saying I learned over from a realtor over in Indiana. He said, "Carpenter I ain't, so caulk before I paint." So that's kind of interesting. But no matter how good of a carpenter you are, you still, with trim work, you still need to do some caulking to seal your edges on that, and it gives you a nice clean look once you put your final coat of paint on. So we're just going to scrape this down a little bit. Oops, cut into the wood there. And I said, don't worry if you cut into the wood, you just get back the opposite direction, trim it off, and then start over again. And then you want to do your fat edge. You just take a knife and slide it on right on down. Doesn't have to be exact, just kind of knock the high edge off. And the fat side's easy, you can just lay your blade up against it and it just curls it right off. And if you got a good sharp blade, it doesn't take anything at all to do that. Okay, and of course there's a little bit on the back side where some squeezed underneath there, so knock that off. Hopefully our new trim will sit much more flush than what the builder's trim guys did. I don't want to knock other people's work, even if you don't do it to exacting standards. It still lasted 25 to 28 years. So, okay, so that's that. That piece is ready to go. I'm going to take that out to my garage. I've got a power miter box out there. It's not a fancy, expensive one. It's a really cheap one. I actually wrote Fisher Price on the side of it. I think it's so cheap, but it does some pretty accurate cuts just for your standard basic 45 to do basic trim work. Of course, you can always just do the old hand saw, and I did that when I was a much younger man too as well. So we'll get with that and come back and put the trim on. Okay, I've got my top trim cut and ready to fit. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do, or that you want to make sure is you have to do as little work as possible. So in the case of, say, you're not ready to paint this room yet, and you want to try to keep it as clean looking as possible so it doesn't look like the door was just recently replaced. So what I did was I took, where did I go? Okay, I took one of the original trim, I took the original trim boards that we had, and I had this side, which is the side actually cut for my new piece here. But for this side, for a sake, I wanted to match our base trim down at the bottom. So, and our door opening actually did not go much any larger width-wise on that. So what I want to do is match that trim at the bottom and then try to match what meets the wall here. And then that's what gave me, I knew that I was covered up here and I'd blend in. So that was my mark there on that side, and then I did the same on that side. So that's how I determined how long this board needed to be from that point. So, so then all we have to do is assign up our marks. Now, The thing with the top piece is we know that the door was taller, so we have to make up the difference. Now, we don't want to have that big gap up there, because what's going to happen is our door next to it, the trim is going to be much higher than that. So I'm actually going to hold this trim board down. It's still going to be a little bit higher, but it's not going to be noticeable to anybody that's going to be walking around looking at it this sort. So you want to kind of hold this board down so that way you can get really close to the original height of the door next to it. Now obviously if you don't have any other doors around, it really doesn't matter. You can go ahead and hold your spacing so it's a consistent spacing all the way around. But I'm more concerned about making sure it matches to the door next to that. So we got this one done. You want to get a larger nail. This is, I think, kind of around the 5 penny size finish nail. You want it to be kind of large for the fat part of the wood. And then we'll have some smaller nails we'll use once it's all set in place. So we're just going to put this one nail in to hold it up temporarily. And then that way we can get our measurement for our side boards. And you don't want to hit that nail all the way down because you don't want to dimple your wood. Just get it to the surface to hold it, and that way you can come back with the nail set later on. Okay, I've got my 2 pieces of trim cut for our sides. And I said again, what I wanted to do was adjust it to really kind of hide up where the original trim was, and most importantly, for it to match the baseboard down at the bottom. So once it's all painted up, nobody will ever notice any of your little variances that you'll have with that. So what we're going to do is hold the 2 pieces together there and make sure everything lines up good. And we're pretty much committed with our right side, so we're going to go ahead and take care of the right side first and just get it tacked in place with a couple of the larger finish nails. Now what you don't want to do with these larger nails is to get too close to your end, because it will split the wood. So you do want to kind of hang away 4 or so inches away from any of your cut edges. Okay. Cut looks really good, and we'll go up to the other side. Oops. Now, one of the things that you don't want to worry about too much about is how good your miter joining is, because, like I said again before, carpenter ain't caulk before I paint. You always will have a little bit of a variance in that, just because in the real world there's nothing perfect and square and plumb and level with a door. So that's the one good thing, is that you'll use a little caulking in. I do it no matter what, how good my joint looks. I still put a little caulking in it just to fill any little nooks and crannies that might be left open on that. Okay, so now let's get our tacked into place. We'll go ahead and put a couple more in for our top piece. Not a whole lot of wood back there for whatever reason. Well, the builder didn't do so well with getting that header up there, so I'm pretty sure in this style of house, this is a load-bearing wall. So, and we know we cut our drywall up there, so don't know why we're not hitting any solid wood. For that top piece, not a big deal though, because we're going to use smaller nails where it's actually going to attach to the door on that. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple more on the mid sections for the big piece. Hard piece right there, bent the nail. Okay, now we can leave it at that, but I really like to use the trim as part of the door structure install. So the big nails are getting us into the framing of the walls, and then the little nails are going to attach the trim to the frame of the door. So essentially you're building rigidity between the frame of the door and the frame of the wall by having the two sets of nails in there. So I'm going to get some small finish nails, and then we'll tack in the last little bit. Okay, so the small nails that I'm going to be using, these actually are quite small. They're just a little over 1 inch long versus the larger ones, which are about 2 inches or better long on that. So we're going to use this for the small edges. And this is really what's going to help hold our top piece in place. Again, you want to keep them away from your cut edges, just preventing the splitting of the wood. Now I like to use quite a few nails in that condition. Again, a lot of humidity changes throughout the year. Tend to see a lot of gapping with that, and just like to make sure everything stays nice and tight on that. So that's pretty much it for the trim work. The only thing we have left to do now, set our nails. As far as nail filler goes, some people use painter's caulk. I kind of like to use a little drywall mud and just do a light sand, because you can build a little bit up on it. You can do light sand, and once it shrinks, it hides that shrinkage, covers very well on that. And then we'll do some caulking back on our gaps here, which will close everything nice and tight, and then also kind of hide up where we'd been, so it's not as obvious, again, if you're not ready to paint the walls right away, which I'm not. So we'll button these things up, and then we'll go back with some of the caulking and then install the hardware. Okay, now we're ready to put the knob set on. Door's not painted yet. That's going to be another day on the list of my projects to do, so I'm not going to rush into the painting right now. And certainly don't need me to show you how to paint. That's pretty simple, straightforward. So what we have is we have the knob set, and then we have the deadbolt lock. First thing you need to do is install what they call the back sets. And that's, of course, that's the latch for the knobs, and then the deadbolt for that. They do come in one standard basic. This is the deadbolt. There is different measurements of back sets. So some knobs are set farther over than others. So that's why you can actually, on the deadbolt, you can twist it and it'll give you the different lengths. On this one, it's a standard length. So, and what you want to do is, you'll see that the hole is, if you twist it up that way, it's up high and it's down low. So you want it down low for the deadbolt part. So you just slip that in, pretty simple, straightforward. Doors are always pre-cut and set up for that on there. And then we just have to put some screws into it. Now, when I'm putting the knob sets together, I'm not a fan of the power drills. I do have a cordless drill. It sure is a lot easier just to run them in with a cordless drill or an electric drill. But the problem is you just tend to strip the screws out. So you really just want to get it down and just snug it into place. So what you want to do is just kind of center it up into the hole, give it a little bump. And you don't want to send the first one all the way in yet, just kind of get it to where it's just about to its position, and then you want to go ahead and center up your next one. And then just center it up, give it a bump, it'll help the threads catch. It's a little bit extra work than the power drill, but again, you're not going to over tighten, you're not going to strip the wood out, you're going to have a nice snug fit and a proper working lock. And I want you to have them both set in, then you can go ahead and snug them down the rest of the way. That way, just if you're offset a little bit, you're going to keep the back set square, and it'll fit a lot better. And then you go ahead and just snug it down. Just try not to over tighten it. Wood on modern day doors, well, on exterior doors, it's very soft wood. It's very easy to strip it out. If you're doing an interior door, 9 times out of 10 with the hollow core doors, it's not even real wood anymore. It's a pressed paperboard product, and it's really easy to strip those out. So that's that one. Now, I'm reusing the knobs from my last door. I already have these keyed to fit all the other entry doors to the house, and so I'm going to reuse those. But the last back set was damaged from the ill fitment of the last door, so I bought a new one at the hardware store, and again they have a way of adjusting for the different depths of back sets, so we're just going again with the standard depth. They come with different plates. They have a rounded over plate, and then of course there's a square. It just depends on what the manufacturer uses. 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the rounded edged one. So, and then there's a backup plate that helps hold this back set in. So you slide that onto there. That's the inside of it, and then the outside goes over it like that. And then that's what holds that piece once it's screwed in, holds it in nice and snug. So, and again, you always want the tapered side facing the door jamb. And again, just snug them down, try not to over tighten them. Like I said, the softwood strips very easy on that. It's a good idea to hang on to the long screws just in case you do strip it out. The long ones really get a lot more bite to it if you need to, but as long as you don't over tighten and you do that, that's not a problem at all. Now as far as the knob set, this one's all set and ready to go. So we put the key side in first. And then you just have the back side that has the screws. Again, no need for a power screw, just good old-fashioned screwdriver works just fine. Okay. But one thing you don't want to do too is that sometimes if you ever tighten those and really clamp into it, it kind of throws that back set off a little bit there with that. Now as far as deadbolt, same thing, very simple, straightforward, 2 screws. So you put your key side in first, and it's a little kind of rounded on one side, flat on the other, so you'll be able to just go ahead and line that up and stick that in the hole. And then you have your back side. And then what you want to do is just kind of open it midway, and that exposes your 2 holes. And then you have your 2 screws that go to that. And it's really just kind of eyeballing in and getting those lined up. And that's it. Very simple, straightforward, ready to go. So now the only thing we have left to do is put the strike plates that go on the frame of the door. Everything's lining up on that. Good solid fit. We're good to go. So the installation is complete. The trim's done on the outside of the garage, on the other side of the door, so all that trim work was done. The only thing left to do is just fill in some of the nail holes and paint the door, and it is done and complete at this point. And as you can see, it's very simple, straightforward installation. Doesn't take any major tools to do. Very quite simple, easy do-it-yourself project. Biggest thing is just take your time and think things through. The way it comes apart, the way it goes back together again. And if somebody else's hands can do it, so can yours. The installation of this door is exactly the same process for interior doors or regular exterior doors. Just the only difference is that you may have some different trim options that you may do. In the case of this one, we had to do a little jam extension to get the trim to match on the outside. Sometimes you have to do that with exteriors of older houses. The walls are a bit wider than modern day doors, so you do have to make some accommodations there. But other than that, it's not a big task and very simple to do. The cost of the door was $199. I did spend an additional $34 because I had to buy the deadbolt lock and the shims, and actually after I was looking for nails, I found another stack of shims. I didn't really have to buy those, but you certainly will need to do that. And of course you'll need some additional nails and screws as far as installing the framework and the trim. And then the trim work, because the door was a bit larger, that was an unexpected expense. And that was another $36 for that. So all told, we're still less than $300 total install do-it-yourself. The standard install for Lowe's, currently they're offering $199 for a standard install, but that doesn't accommodate in case they may do, like again, some modifications on your framework, or if there's any damages below on that. So there may be some other additional fees that they would charge in there. So essentially you save $200 doing it yourself. I started this project at about 5 p.m. It is now 10. It doesn't take me that long if I wasn't doing the videoing and everything else and just direct my attention to just doing the task at hand. It's really only a couple to 3 hours and then painting, so it's a very quick, easy thing, can save you a lot of money. And once you do one, all the other ones are very simple after that. And like I said, the process is the same for whether it's an exterior door or an interior door. They're all the same. And as you can see, I've reused some of the old trim, and you can't tell a difference in the profile. So anytime you can reuse your trim, certainly will save you a lot of money in that. So hope you found everything informative, and I'm very pleased with my new door. And hope that you'll see some of our other videos and get more information on how to take care of your home and make it your